Good morning, students. Hope all of you are fine. Beta, this lecture is also in the continuation of the previous chapter, chapter 7 of part 2, and name of the chapter is an imperial capital Vijaynagara. So beta, till now we have discussed so many topics. Those were about the Vijaynagara Empire, its water resources, fortification and roads, the rise and Naikas, the apogee and decline of the empire. So all these topics we have already discussed, and beta, today we will discuss about the royal center. So beta, this royal center, it was located in the southwestern part of the settlement, and whether its name was royal center, but still it included over 60 temples. It means the patronage of temples and cults was important for rulers. As we have read in the previous chapter also, the Bhakti and Sufi tradition, there also we read that the ruler, they financially assisted these religious tradition so that they could be associated with the followers of that particular tradition. And the same thing was here also, that there were so many in this royal center also there were 60 temples, and it means the cults was important for rulers, and they just want to validate their authority through association and the with all those shrines, because beta, whatever pilgrimage are there, the shrines are there. So if those shrines are supported by the ruler, then the followers also support that ruler. So this was the reason that every time these pilgrimage places or shrines, they were getting the patronage from rulers. And even 30 building complexes, they have been identified as palaces, and even these were relatively large structures that do not seem to have been associated with ritual functions. Even there is one difference between these structures and temples, as the temples, they were constructed entirely of masonry. Masonry hota hai beta stonework, while the superstructure of the secular building was made up of perishable material. So this was the difference. The temples and shrines, those were found in the royal center, or those were found all over the Vijayanagara empire. Now beta, the next topic is it was also situated in the royal center only, and name of that place was Mahanavmi Dibba. But it was the very distinctive structure in that area. So even the king's palace is the largest of the enclosure, but has not yielded definitive evidence of being a royal residence. It means जो भी हमको excavation में evidences मिले हैं, according to that जो largest enclosure होना चाहिए वो किसका होना चाहिए, king के palace का, but still we have not find any definitive evidences, right? So this Mahanavmi Dibba beta, it has this area, it has two of the most impressive platforms, usually called the audience hall and the Mahanavmi Dibba. Beta, this Mahanavmi Dibba, it was the upraised platform, like आपका stage होता है, it was that kind of place. And that entire complex, it is surrounded by high double walls with the street running between them. And the audience hall is a high platform with slots for wooden pillars at close and regular intervals. Means जो इसका audience hall था, it was also a high platform, and at that audience hall and the regular interval, wooden pillars were there. And even it had a staircase going up to the second floor, which rested on these pillars. So these pillars were so closely spaced that hardly any space was left in between. So we cannot say that for what purpose the hall was used. And even this Mahanavmi Dibba, it was located one of the highest point. And do you know that its base area was approx 11,000 square feet and its height was 40 feet. So there is a evidence that it supported a wooden structure and the base of the platform is covered with relief carving. मीन्स जो ये पूरा हम स्ट्रक्चर की बात कर रहे हैं महानवमी डिब्बा की, इट वॉज सपोर्टेड विद द वुडन स्ट्रक्चर एंड द बेस इट वॉज डेकोरेटेड विद द रिलीफ कार्विंग. बेटा रिलीफ कार्विंग होता है, इट इज़ अ स्कल्पचर टेक्निक where जो sculpted elements they remain attached to the solid background. means उस wood के अंदर से ही carving की जाती है and that structure जो भी उस पर बनाए जाते हैं those were attached to that material only and it is known as the relief carving. And now this Mahanavami Dibba, it was so significant. It means some rituals would be associated with this structure. So Mahanavami, if we speak this Mahanavami, it means that the 9th day of the Hindu festival. बेटा जब नवरात्रे होते हैं उसका जो 9th day होता है दुर्गा पूजा का, it is known as the Mahanavami, right? And like it is known by the various names. Like North India, it is known as Dashera, it is known as Durga Puja in Bengal, and Navratri of Mahanavami in peninsular India. So the Vijaynagara kings, they displayed their prestige, power and suzerainty on this occasion. बेटा सुजेरेनिटी होता है द रिलेशन बिटवीन डिफरेंट स्टेट्स, मीन्स जो इनके फॉरेन अलाइंसेस होते हैं या दूसरी स्टेट्स के साथ जो रिलेशंस होते हैं. And even what kind of ceremonies were celebrated on this platform? Because the ceremonies performed on the occasion included the worship of the image, worship of the state horse, and the sacrifice of buffaloes, बेटा जो बलि चढ़ाते थे, and other animals. With that, dances were held, wrestling matches, कुश्ती के matches हुआ करते थे, and the procession of caparison. कैपेरिज्न हॉर्सेस, बेटा कैपेरिज्न हॉर्सेस होते हैं जो हॉर्स को डेकोरेट करके लाया जाता है. एलिफेंट्स एंड चैरियट्स, चैरियट्स होते हैं रथ, एंड सोल्जर्स एज वेल एज द रिचुअल रिप्रेजेंटेशंस बिफोर द किंग एंड हिज गेस्ट बाय द चीफ नायकास एंड सबॉर्डिनेट किंग्स मार्क द ओकेजन. मीन्स it is said that कि in that Mahanavami Dabba that worship of the image was held, worship of the state horse, and even the sacrifice of buffaloes and animals. And just to enjoy that day, dances were held, wrestling matches were held, डिफरेंट प्रोसेशन जो होता है कि एक झांकी निकाली जाती है बेटा, और दैट प्रोसेशन कंसिस्ट ऑफ कंप्राइज ऑफ डेकोरेटिव हॉर्सेज, एलिफेंट्स, चैरियट, सोल्जर्स, एंड सो मेनी रिचुअल प्रेजेंटेशन वर ऑल्सो हेल्ड. And even on the last day of the festival, the king inspected his army and the armies of the Nayakas in a grand ceremony in an open field. Like we read earlier in that topic Amar Nayaka, उसमें क्या था बेटा, जो ये भी हमारे आर्मी चीफ होते थे, they were allotted some land area, और उस लैंड एरिया से जो भी रेवेन्यू आता था, it was used to maintain that army by that नायक. So in that occasion of Mahanavami, the king, he just supervised the army of the Nayakas also, and even these Nayakas, they brought rich gift, that was known as the tribute, right? And now the question arises that was the Mahanavami Dibba that stand today the center of the elaborate ritual. So scholars, जो भी हमारे historians हुए हैं बेटा, they have pointed out the space that surrounding the structure. बेटा जो ये महानवमी डिब्बा है, इसके surrounding में जो space है, it is not adequate for the procession of armed men, women और large number of animals. Means उसके surrounding में इतना space ही नहीं है. Like some of the other structure in the royal center, it remains an enigma. मीन्स वेदर लिटरेरी सोर्सेज के अकॉर्डिंग तो ये बोला गया कि वहाँ पे प्रोसेशंस होते थे एट द टाइम ऑफ महानवमी एंड इट वाज अ 3-day फेस्टिवल, बट द वट एवर स्पेस इज रिक्वायर्ड फॉर सच प्रोसेशन, फॉर सच सेलिब्रेशन, it is not around that Mahanavami Dibba. So it remains an enigma, means it is very difficult to understand and interpret. Now the next topic is beta the other buildings in the royal center. Like now we have read that various shrines and temples were there. This Mahanavami Dibba and audience hall was there. Now what were the other buildings in royal center? Beta, one of the most beautiful building in the royal center is the Lotus Mahal, and it was named by British traveler in 19th century. So for which purpose this building was used for? So even one suggestion is found that a map was drawn by Mackenzie that it may have been a council chamber की जहाँ पे जो king है वो meetings लेता था, or the king met his advisors. While most temples were located in the second center, but there were several in the royal center as well. And even most one of the most spectacular of this is one that the known as the Hazara Rama temple. This was it meant to be used only by the king and his family. The images of the central shrine are missing, however sculpted panels on the walls survive. These include scenes from the Ramayana sculpted on the inner wall of the shrine. So many archaeological sources these are found by our historians. So even while many of the structures at Vijaynagara were destroyed when the city was sacked, and the tradition of building palatial structure were continued by the Naikas. बेटा ये palatial structure होते हैं जो spacious और very impressive structure, but still many of the building it still survived. As we know beta, in history is based on the excavation, the literary sources, archaeological sources. So something or some finding are like that, those are very difficult to understand or to interpret. So this was the lecture for today beta. Hope all of you have understood the topic. Thank you and have a nice day.